Yeah, welcome back to Rich Words Music, where I am at 42 Gear Street again, this time with the real Prince of Wales. Once again, it's Mr. Leigh Fuge. And today what we're doing is sort of a high concept video because I'd had an idea to do this before the show.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to get you involved with it as well because it's perfect for you. Now, if you don't know Leigh, by the way, he has a very, very good channel indeed. The links will be down in the description. And there's also some required viewing, which we'll get onto later. So check him out as well. But you play a lot of guitar, you do a lot of other stuff as well, but you're a very musical person, and you also play in covers bands.
Yeah.
So you're a very versatile guitar player, a very versatile musician, and you require a guitar-based setup that can give you any kind of sound you could possibly need within the scope of a set list or the scope of an evening.
Yeah.
So what I thought would be amazing to do would be to bring you along, and what we would do is go through and find a reasonably priced guitar from the equipment available here, some reasonably priced pedals, and a decent amp to run them through.
Yeah.
Now, because we're at 42 Gear Street, we weren't able to really do this in a budget sort of a way. But what we decided to do was go with a really good clean platform for an amplifier.
Yeah.
So sat behind us here somewhere.
That side is the Tone King Imperial Mark II. That's a lovely shot of that. That's a great amp.
It's a beautiful amplifier. It's a premium priced amp as well.
Yeah,
but
it's very good.
If you're playing gigs like you need a decent clean channel, and that is the basis for everything else you do. So while we've chosen the Tone King today, there's many, many other options that you could have. And if you're a player who's, touring around doing gigs, you might just show up with a pedal board anyway and just plug into whatever clean channel that they've got, mightn't you?
Yes. Yeah, that's always my kind of idea whenever I'm building a board, really, is to think about the worst case scenario of showing up to a gig somewhere and just being given an amp that, might be an amp you're unfamiliar with. And the way I always look at it is if the amp can do clean and you can set the EQ flat, if you've got a versatile board, you can pretty much get it to do whatever you want. And that's always my sort of idea with building pedal boards is I always think, what if I show up and there's only this amp and I rely on having 3 different overdrives and I know that amp has got one channel, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
But if you can build a versatile board, which obviously will come on to the pedals in a sec, which is why some of these got picked as well, because each one of these pedals is also multifunctional. So again, less space, less gear to take, but with maximum options.
Yeah, maximum flexibility for a gig that you might play. What are some of the most requested covers or the songs that you play the most often in your cover sets?
Oh, wow. It ranges from Uptown Funk by Bruno Mars, I can't get away from that one, through to
It's a great song.
Yeah, it's great, but stuff like Dakota by the Stereophonics, Mr. Brightside by the Killers, and again, they're all very different songs. You've got Uptown Funk, which is super clean, crisp funk tones, and then you've got Dakota, which is it's got delay and it's got a bit of chorus, I think. There's some high gain stuff. And when you play especially the world I sort of work in, which is the sort of private wedding and function world, it's super versatile set lists, but sometimes you don't have the space to take a big rig.
Yeah.
So you can't get away with taking a huge pedal train with 200 pedals on.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to think, well, I might be in a place that's, a meter squared, and I have to fit all my gear in there with a PA system and a full band, So you don't want to be the guy taking up all the room. So you've got to think, okay, how can I downsize this in a manageable way without losing functionality?
Yeah, exactly. And of course, one option to do that is to get a modeler board. So here at the 42 Gear Street event, for example, we have the Pod Go by Line 6 and different variations on the Helix. But there's many other options you can go for if you want to go down the digital modeling route. But we didn't want to. We wanted to pick out some nice gear to do that for us. And actually, that's the required viewing. There's going to be a link down below to a spontaneous sort of a vlog that we shot as we picked the pedals and the guitar and talked about the amp as well. So go and watch that on Leigh's channel. You can pause this video right now, actually, and watch that first if you'd like to, or just watch it after. Your choice. But we went through the reasons why we picked the pedals. We'll just explain it a bit briefly here, and then we'll get into some playing. So this is the board, if we just cut to the shot of the table. So moving across from this side to this side, take us through what you picked and tell us why briefly.
Yeah, so obviously you can see there's a tuner here as well. I would always recommend having a tuner of some sort in your rig. Obviously we didn't pick this as part of the rig, this is just here, but I would normally have a tuner, but you may have a headstock tuner or whatever. So the main board, left to right, would be, the way I always do it is I like to have at least 2 different gain stages. So depending on the gig, Sometimes I'll set the 2 gain stages for different drives. In this case, I've got the Archer set, so it's just like a clean boost. And then the Wampler bell is like my drive. But if I was doing a gig where I needed 2 different gain sounds, I would just ramp up the gain on this a bit, use that as my first gain, and then stack my second.
Yeah.
That then goes into the Wampler Terraform, which again, for me is, I don't know what I've done to that now, is a multi-modulation pedal. Again, doing loads of different types of songs in one night. I might only need a chorus effect for 8 bars of a song. So I don't really want to give up a space on my board for 8 bars. So if I can fit that, if I can have a box like this, which has 10 different modulation effects in, then I'm only going to use once in a set.
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine for me. And this has got presets, so even better. Same thing with the delay. Sometimes you need a couple of different delays. But really the most important function is the tap tempo. Mm-hmm. So we typically play everything to a click. So you can kind of lock in the tempos there. But sometimes, you know, the drummer might be having a funny night. You might go off click. So you need to play catch up. So having something like this is great because I can program like three different delay types, tap tempo them as I need them on the fly. Mm-hmm. And I just like to always have a reverb. Some amps have reverb built in, but you know, you can never trust it. So there's nothing worse than showing up to a gig and plugging into an amp and finding out the reverb tank's blown up or something. So I always like to have a reverb pedal on my board just in case. And even if I only use one sound, this is a very versatile reverb. But yeah, if I just use one sound, you know, who cares? It's just a nice reverb sound. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and like we were saying in the blog that we did downstairs, none of these are really what you would call super affordable pedals. So, you know, we've got a series of great brands here at 42 Gear Street making really, really good gear. So these are not really particularly cheap pedals. We worked out that this pedal board here alone would cost about $1,000, $1,100, $1,200 maybe in your local currency. Yeah. So it's for people who are pretty serious about their sounds. Yeah. But again, you get the build quality, you get the reliability, and with pedals like the Terraform, you get options for everything.
Yes. So I think that's more important sometimes, is having that option.
Yeah. So you've got amazing versatility. And amazing versatility is also what we went for with the guitar.
It is. So we went for the PJD Woodford. These are really cool. These are custom built in the UK and they retail at like the 1,200 mark, which is, for the quality of guitar you get, is insane. But went for the HSS version, again, purely because from my perspective, our set lists can range from Bruno Mars to Aerosmith. Yeah. So really, I spend most of my night living here on the in-between neck and middle position. Mm-hmm. But when you're playing a rock song, there we go, we got the bridge humbucker. Yeah. And I don't love the sound of a coil split humbucker, so it's just nice to have a proper humbucker there for when you need to go off a little bit. Yeah. No one ever really uses a bridge single coil anyway, so
no.
Why not replace it with
not for covers gigs, right?
Yeah. Why not replace it with something that's a bit more useful?
Yeah, exactly. And these are awesome pickups too, because I've got a separate video on PJD, which is probably in the description if it's already out. We went through the whole family, but this is the standard Woodford line, the new one, which made in England for around £1,200.
Yeah, I really like these.
And these are bare knuckle pickups, so this is top quality hardware and craftsmanship throughout. This is a great guitar.
Yeah, this is a fantastic guitar. I'm really into this. This is the sort of thing that I would go for, especially for like a versatile gig. I'd always reach for something like this.
Yeah, and again, like there's no end to the amount of HSS guitars that you could get, or flexible guitars, but we're choosing instruments that are obviously at the show here to do this. So that's our rig. We've got the PJD, we've got the 5 pedals there, and we've got the Tone King behind us. And it's time for you to make a few sounds for us, a few classic tones.
Cool. So let's just turn everything off to start with. So this is just completely dry. So like I said, I would usually live in that sort of position 4. So whenever I dial in my versatile rig, I always start with like completely dry. I want that percussive attack to the sound. Yeah. Then I start thinking about space. So then I would probably dial in like a spring or maybe like a hall reverb. So again, we're not using the R1 to its full potential here. We're literally just getting a bit of space. Yep. So that's probably a bit much space. So let's just dial that back. So that to me would be like a great start point for a clean tone I would look for, because that could get me through playing like funk stuff. And then I can build on that then.
Is reverb something that you generally just leave on and it's just always there?
Yeah, for me, I just like the sound of a guitar with reverb.
Yeah.
I think if you've got I start my clean tone dry because I like to get that percussive sound. But then the space is what really, for me, makes it come alive. That's probably a bit much for what I would want as a reverb, but, you know, it works. Maybe a bit too much of a decay there, but, you know, you get the idea. So, yeah, that would be my starting point for a clean tone then. But, yeah, I would leave the reverb on, like, all night once I've got it dialed in the way I want. The other thing I tend to leave on is like a clon style, because again, all this will do really is just give a little bit of a push.
Yeah.
In this case, it's kind of pushing the amp over a little bit. So that would probably, with an amp like this one, I probably wouldn't use that. I would use this more as a second gain stage. But if it was an amp with tons of headroom, I would leave that on just a bit of a clean lift.
Yeah.
So that then would be my sort of go-to clean tone for the evening.
Yeah.
And then I just stack up on top of that.
So what you're saying is you'd probably never just be playing through the amp on its own. You'd always have the Archer or that kind of a clean thickener to boost your sound a bit.
If the amp allows for it.
Yeah.
Like if I was gigging with this particular amp, that is just pushing it over the edge. So if I showed up and that was the amp I was using, I would just use this as a drive pedal instead.
Okay.
So I do vary what I do with the first drive pedal just to suit whatever amp I'm playing through as well. But yeah, that would be my sort of bass tone then. So that would be everything else now would come on top of that. So I guess the next thing then would just be getting a good sort of rock sound. So I could go then from playing like my clean stuff, which would be like my position 5. And then that sounds great already.
That sounds nice.
I haven't even tweaked that yet. That's pretty much just everything up at midnight.
And this is the Wampler bell pedal, which is their take on the sort of...
The Noble's ODR1.
Yeah, the Nashville Session Pros secret pedal. It's
a great circuit. It's a nice drive, and there's enough sort of grit in there. Like if you push the gain to like 3/4 of the way, you can play rock on that. But it maintains that note separation.
Yeah.
Which is really nice because when you're playing like big chords, they sound better when they're in tune as well. When you're playing big chords on an ODR1 style, it just maintains that kind of clarity in the notes.
And that tone that we've just heard there, is that going to basically give you as much crunch as you would ever need for a standard covers gig?
For me, yeah. Like for my personal playing style, I pick quite hard. So if I was playing with that kind of tone, that would be like my top level. Sort of as far as I need. And then if I wanted a bit less, back off the old volume.
Very nice.
Keeps it nice and versatile.
Do you play a lot with the volume control on the guitar? Yeah, you ride it a lot?
Yeah, I do. The other reason I like to have 2 drives is I can also use one as like a lead boost. So I might do something like this instead. So if the Archer is off, just to give it a little bit of a lift as well.
Yeah, sure.
Sometimes if I've got space, I'll have another pedal that would be like just a boost.
Yeah.
But again, it's all just subjective to the rig you build. So some people might prefer to have a separate lead boost as well. I do quite like stacking gains. I just like the way it fattens out.
Yeah. Do you generally have 2 on your board then, or do you have 3 or 4 or more? Or
at the moment, on my current versatile board, I have 4 drive pedals because why not?
Yeah, if you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what have you got? Can you tell us? Yeah, you can tell us.
I've got the Cherry Tone Centauro, which is my clon. I've got the Tate FX Antares, which is on the Builder board. So that is actually at one of the Gear Street videos. So there'll be some videos on that pedal, as well as a bunch of others. I've got the Analog Man King of Tone, and then I've sort of got a wild card slot then, which is my boost. So at the moment I'm using the MXR Timmy, but I've also been using like another version of like an ODR1 or just whatever else I feel like. Sometimes I just feel like a different lead tone for gigs. I've got this, the Mako D1, and I'm also using another, not the Wampler Terraform, but a similar one, Boss do one that I'm using, which is like their multi-effects or multi-modulation pedal.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about the modulation then, because it's like, as you said, it's the kind of effect where you don't need to have it on for all of the songs, but there are specific sort of iconic riffs and tunes that do sometimes feature an effect on this pedal that you would need. Yes.
So a good one is always like chorus. Like you can't really go wrong with chorus. And again, chorus is one of those effects that you might use for like you said, 30 seconds of a song. It might just be there. The reason I like these kind of pedals is I can have those kind of things like, you know, an Autowah. That's always handy for cover gigs because, you know, sometimes you just can't take a full wah pedal.
I can't remember who it was, but I was watching an interview recently with a very famous, respected kind of sideman guitar player who always is kind of riding his wah pedal during rhythm sections just to kind of differentiate the frequencies and make it slightly more interesting. Can't remember who it was, but if I do remember, I'll put a link down there. But yeah, this is the kind of pedal that gives you those little extra bits of spice that you need. And often I think with some iconic riffs and songs, off the top of my head, Boulevard of Broken Dreams by Green Day. That has a very choppy tremolo at the start. And if you were to not have a tremolo on your board and play that song, it wouldn't sound right, would it?
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's even more extreme than that and play with a bit of distortion power chords, and it's instantly recognizable. And if you were to try and do that without a tremolo, you wouldn't be able to manage it.
I think for me as well, one thing that's super important is having a multi-modulation with a tap tempo. Because like I did there, I just played that and tapped in how fast I want the tremolo to go. You can get all different sort of divisions and lengths of tremolo speed there. I might be tapping that really badly. So yeah, that makes that very versatile to me.
Yeah, and there's a nice sounding effect as well. And I've also noticed that you've got 4 different presets on there, and presumably with the MIDI 128, if you want it. So you could, you know, the sky's the limit with that pedal.
Yes, very versatile.
Yeah, and on this side of the board, slightly more complex than people might need. But again, if you want versatility, you've got it here. It's the delay and the reverb.
Yes. So again, for me, I would probably be using a very simple sound with my delay. Maybe just like a slapback type thing. That's not turning on. Oh, it's on there. So I would probably be using something like even shorter than that. Maybe something like that. Let's mix. That's probably the bulk of what I would use the delay for. Again, if I'm playing leads, it's quite handy. To have that thickener. The only other thing I would do is if I was playing a song with a very specific delay part. That, again, why something with presets is really cool, because you can pre-program stuff like that before the gig, especially if you play to a click. You can literally map out your stuff.
The BPM is right there. So, for example, I don't know, U2 or whatever, if you're doing some U2 songs, they rely on reverb and delay to do it. So you would need it.
I always like to have a tap tempo on a modulation and a delay for that reason, because I can sort of do a lot of my tone prep before the gigs. And then I can just show up and be like, right, okay, this preset. And if there's a slight variance, you can control it in real time with the tap, but at least you've got the template there before you even show up.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, you can do a lot with very few pedals.
Yeah, you can do huge amounts. I mean, we've been sat here for about 10 minutes with the board now, and I've heard pretty much every tone in my head from sort of 60s pop through to, 90s classic rock classics, and it can do more modern stuff as well. So that is extremely versatile. I don't know if you'd managed to do kind of more niche covers if someone wanted to Enter Sandman or something like that. Could we get into that sort of territory, do you think?
Of course we could. How much of it do you want me to play on your channel?
That'll do.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a huge chorus sound. Chorusy, spatial.
The chorus is fine, but what about the heavier riffs on it? Do you reckon we could manage that?
Yeah, why not? So, bridge pickup. We want lots of bass here, don't we? So again, EQ is important on drive pedals. I think if you've got a drive pedal with like more than just a tone control, that's also really useful when it comes to shaping different sounds. I'm going to push the Archer into it. I'm also actually going to use my slapback as a bit of a thickener as well. With with a bit less reverb. And a bit less again, because that's still too much. There's probably a bit too much mid in this tone in general for that kind of vibe, but you can...
You could do it, is the point that I guess we're trying to make.
I think between these two pedals, there's probably enough gain. If we could scoop the mids on that, then we'd be straight into 90s Metallica sound.
Yeah, in my opinion, we're close enough. But I guess another question I would have for you is, I've never been in the covers band. I've never done that scene. I've never done gala gigs or weddings or anything.
Yeah.
How important would you say it is to the people listening to the music for you as a guitarist to have the tones bang on?
That's a good question. I personally don't think it's super important because most of the time people won't notice. What they notice most of the time is the song. So if there's important hooks in the song, obviously you need to get those down. If there are tones that are part of the hook, like for instance, you mentioned U2, like you couldn't play a U2 song without delay.
Yeah.
So the delay is part of the hook. So in those cases, tone is kind of important, but as long as it's a workable tone that does the same job, I don't think you have to go down the road of, he used this pedal, so I need to make sure I'm using that exact thing. No one's going to notice if your chorus rate is set, 10% faster than it was on the record. Yeah. People won't notice that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Or at least I don't think they will anyway.
Yeah. Have you ever used a digital rig like a Podgo, like a Helix for a covers gig, or are you strictly you're not strictly pedals amp guy? Yeah,
I've used all sorts. I've used pedal boards into those kind of units as well. Like I have a Helix rack that I've taken to gigs with a pedal board. I've used like pedal board straight into an amp. I've used completely digital stuff, just whatever the gig needs really.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing is just being able to get, the way I look at it is getting as much as I can out of as little as I can.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to have to take, this to every gig. As awesome as this is, I wouldn't want to carry it to every gig because it's big. If I can take this, this is much better because, I can fit this in my backpack or my gig bag with a guitar and I'm away. And that works. So yeah, I think it's just about dialing in the right sounds for that gig. I don't think you have to be too precise.
Yeah, and do you spend a lot of time trying to dial in specific sounds, or is it, again, just kind of a case of ballpark on the night and get the job done?
Yeah, ballpark, really, because this is probably the wrong thing to say at a gear event, but really, to me, I find whatever I plug into, I just sound the same anyway.
Yeah.
Like, each player has their own kind of sound, and while gear does influence your sound, you're still going to sound like you at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So if I plug into the Tone King and then I plug into the Morgan and then the Red 7, with this or without this, I'm still going to sound, in my head, the way that I play is still going to come through. So yeah, I don't worry too much about the specifics. It's just, yeah, there's a chorus sound, that'll do.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not super fussy.
Yeah. All right, cool. And lastly, what's your very favourite song to play as a lead guitarist in a covers band? What's the most popular requested song these days? Is Sex on Fire still the number one?
No, it's kind of gone out now. It's not as... at the moment, it's everyone's crazy for Dua Lipa covers.
Yeah, yeah.
She's huge at the moment.
Yeah.
So in my regular wedding band, we do a lot of like rocked up versions of those songs, which is a lot of fun. So we play some of her tracks, but just put a bit more push into them.
Yeah.
So we get a lot of requests for those kind of things. I don't get many guitar solos live, but, you know, there's no money to be made above the 5th fret, unfortunately, in music.
No, exactly. And there's probably no guitar songs left in the charts these days either, is there?
Not really, no.
Ed Sheeran and Taylor Swift playing acoustics, and that's about it.
I mean, they're doing a great job for the guitar world.
Yeah, they are,
and they're getting a
absolutely,
lot
yeah.
of youngsters into playing guitar. But there's not much, unless you're looking at guys like John Mayer and those kind of players, there's not many current guys that are really pushing the guitar as a lead instrument in the pop world. Maybe someone like Chris Stapleton's doing quite a lot of good for that as well.
Yeah, true, yeah.
But yeah, I think the guitar solo isn't the main focus of those gigs. So yeah, I get the odd one though, so that's fun.
Yeah, that's nice.
We do an Aerosmith cover, so I get to bust up the bridge humbucker
Yeah.
and play some pentatonic licks. That's always pretty fun.
As long as you get your little bit, that's all good.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it, exactly.
All right then, guys. That's all we've got time for today, unfortunately. We've got a strict timetable to adhere to today. Thank you very much, Leigh, for taking part in this video.
Thanks for having me, man. That was fun.
Yeah, it
Thanks
was
so
quite
much
a lot
for
of
having
fun.
me.
Don't forget to sub to Leigh, check out his channel, and go and watch the vlog of us picking these pedals, because that was quite nice as well. We're at the 42 Gear Street 3 event, so there's many, many more videos by Leigh and plenty of other channels that you can see if you're interested in the rest of the gear that is here. I'd like to say a massive thank you to Henning Pauly and all the people who are at and are behind the event, because I think they've done an amazing job to set it up and keep it running and to keep us safe, because we're still living
absolutely.
in uncertain sort of pandemic times, and we've done as much as we can to make sure that we adhere to all the rules and limitations that we have. As I've said, everything is linked down in the description, but that's been it for today's video. I've been Rich for Rich Words Music, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.